the issues. Okay.
All right. So you asked me several difficult questions. First, can I just say that I agree with Mr. Che that well, first of all, I'll say I don't believe any country will ever declare Doha dead, no matter how many years it stretches on, because no one wants to take the political heat for something, for saying it's dead, even if it is dead. But I also think that there's a significant effort underway to construct a constructive, productive Plan B, as Mr. Che said, and that would I'll term, and I think some people have termed, fast track and slow track. So the concept that let's do an early harvest, a fast track of those areas of the DDA agenda that are either most ready or most important, and get agreement on those by the end of 2011. Because as Professor Chung said, there are very serious political elections coming up in 2012 in the U.S. and many other countries that are instrumental in the WTO, and it will, I can tell you from a U.S. perspective, get caught up, embroiled in the political season and the U.S. presidential election. So it's very important that if something is to get done, it gets done in 2011. Now, I know Pascal Lamy feels very strongly that countries shouldn't just give up after this early harvest or the fast track, that there should be commitment to continue on the slow track or the next track for these other issues. You know, personally, I'm skeptical whether that can work. But I feel that the fast track could work if there's enough commitment by all the parties. And this goes to your question to me, Dr. Ahn. I feel that too much pressure is put on the United States as, quote unquote, the leader. All too often, too many countries sit back and wait for the United States to move or wait for the United States to come up with a proposal. And again, as Professor Chung said earlier, we have too many players in the WTO now. There needs to be more leadership than just the United States. That's my view on that.
Well, it seems to me U.S. and China and the same boat as far as the limit issue is concerned. Maybe I think the two guys, need to square out on this early conclusion of the Doha round. There should be a great breakthrough. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me just wind up a tentative conclusion on the Doha round issues. All the panelists seems to me very much pessimistic, but nevertheless, every economy, big or small, should do their best, effort to make sure that this Doha round going, even working on the fast track issues and the slow track issues. So let us hope that the Doha round is still alive, not really dead, not doomed. Okay. With that conclusion, now let me move on these free trade, issues. To fill up the void of the multilateralism, a number of countries now engaged. Okay, the regional, the free trade, the agreement, and especially I would like to focus on the free trade agreement movement going on in Northeast Asia as well as East Asia as a whole. Now going back the reverse order. Amy, tell me this: Korea. We've been working on the Korea-U.S. FTA many years now. Waiting for congressional ratification as well as Korean National Assembly ratification. I was always, wondering why United States all of a sudden, talking about this Trans-Pacific, the partnership, dealing with such small economy, Brunei, but you are really missing big trading partners, right? And could you tell us, why the U.S. proposed that Trans-Pacific, partnership, setting aside the big, FTA issues like you have already concluded FTA with the Korea, Colombia, the Panama, okay? Why U.S. move, like that? So I was really curious on this.
Maybe I'll give you a slightly cynical view. If you look at the United States trade policy over the last few years, we don't have much of a trade policy. President Obama has come late to the trade game for a number of reasons. I would argue that key of which is because the U.S. domestic, the public sentiment towards trade has gone in an alarmingly and non-fact-based negative direction, which is something that U.S. businesses and U.S. policymakers should work really hard to combat, but it's not working so far. The fact that President Obama came and we had the Democrats had control of the House had a significant effect on President Obama's ability to work trade issues. And he was fully focused on the global economic meltdown, healthcare reform, et cetera. He did turn to trade, as fast as he could, I thought. But if you look, he has 2 trade initiatives. One is the pending 3 FTAs, the Korea-U.S. FTA, Panama, and Colombia, with, I would argue, from a biased point of view, Korea absolutely first in that and foremost. And President Obama has really, gone on a limb on the Korea-U.S. free trade agreement in terms of pushing it, in terms of saying he's going to get it done and making promises to President Lee. But let's not forget those are left over from his predecessor. So he needs and wanted something of his own in terms of trade policies that not only wasn't a legacy of the Bush administration, but also was different from what the Bush administration did. And TPP is his perfect answer, even though TPP technically was launched by President Bush, but it was so much in its initial stages that President Obama can, latch onto this and call it his own. I would argue, and I think we're going to talk about this in a little bit, that regionalism is going to be a lot more dynamic and important in trade policy around the world going into the future. You could also look at it at a cynical point of view that in a country, the U.S. now, and its domestic mood about trade, and the fact that a lot of these partners in the TPP are small, you could say that the administration is really trying to drag out any decision on trade. I don't know that I feel that way, but you could argue that.
Okay, thank you very much. Amy, very candid assessment, to share with us. Professor Wang Yong, China has been accumulating huge trade surplus over decades now, and hundreds of billions of dollars a year. About, I think, 2 weeks ago, the Premier Wen Jiabao met this President Lee Myung-bak and also the Prime Minister of Japan, the Khan. Okay, he proposed to conclude China, Korea, and Japan, the 3-way FTA. And so given China accumulating huge trade surplus, all right, and you have a tremendous agricultural productivity, agricultural surplus, and but Korea and Japan are very sensitive about the market opening on agriculture sector. Now, my question is that to what extent China is ready to make a concession on the agricultural sector? When the Premier Wen Jiabao proposed to have a free trade agreement to Korea and China and Japan.
Doctor, I think this is an important question, and I also see that it's a very hot question. Okay, so I think I want to see out my observations about that. Okay, the number one, I think we may had the good news about about the changes of the trade the surplus of China. Okay, it reported in the first quarter of this year. China's trade ran the deficit. That means the much more imports. From secondly, I think very important to recognize. Okay, we are talking about U.S.-China trade relations. So actually, I think China play the same role of assembly lines for the Asian economies, especially Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, etc. So I think that is something very, very important, but not openly discussed. okay, that is about East Asia economic and trading the landscape. Okay, that is division of labor among China and its Asian trading partners. Okay, China. So we have one data. Okay, on this. Okay, Chinese factories only earned about 10 to 15. 10 to 15. You see the percent of the values of the experts. Okay, that means the lion's shares go to these investors from the other and the intermediary sections. Okay, so I think when we, especially the important, to outside the people, when we're talking about this, we have to recognize, okay, that is a balance of trade across the Pacific hasn't changed much. Okay, that I think that recognized by the data, the very complicated data to support that. Okay, the only things China have get is the blame from the U.S., from the other developing the partners. Okay, on the FTA among China, Japan, and and Korea. Yes, we see that more more efforts or more the demands on the Chinese side. So I think that decision is based on the economic reality, as I just mentioned that. Okay, we can work together. Okay, we can have some to make the transaction more economically efficient. Okay, if we can, the free, that is not good for Chinese factory, but much benefits. Okay, to the Korean and the Japanese, producers. Okay, of course. On the other hand, we will see that is some political and the security motivations behind the China's FTA decisions, because we see once again the fact of the U.S. Okay, in these regions. Okay, we don't want we want to have a good relationship and a stable and good relationship with very important neighboring countries.
Okay, Professor Wang Yun, this is very, very quick question. Suppose Korea and China, agreed to conclude the free trade agreement. How do you think the North Koreans would react on this? North Korea, if China, Korea, South Korea, agree on the free trade agreement, okay? Because you mentioned the implications of the, security.
Right.
Yeah.
Frankly speaking, I think, to my knowledge, I hasn't yet read any study on this, but I think that is definitely, I think, very important. Ones. But my general observation is that. Okay, we have, China and South Korea has developed so deep and comprehensive economic and trade relations with each other for so long. So I don't think that North Korea will, will be very, produce fire reactions, about such a kind of deal. Quick answer.
Oh, well, it's good news, huh? So we should work on very hard to conclude this intra-regional free trade agreement. Professor Jung In-kyo, in fact, you and I wrote several papers together, and in your view, okay, China, Japan, and Korea concluded free trade agreement with the ASEAN respectively, right? And now the three-way, the FTA, China, Japan, and Korea are still, having the historical legacies and heterogeneity, so on and so on. You, I think that's briefly mentioned that if China takes initiative, okay, China-led FTA could be a possible, a scenario rather than Japan-led FTA among China, Japan, and Korea, the free trade agreement. So you still maintain that position? I mean, China-led FTA is feasible scenario among China, Japan, and Korea?
Yes. in the midterm prospect, China will be sitting in driver's seat in driving East Asian regionalism. Basically, the regionalism or economic blocks is evolving according to the economic sizes. So Chinese economy becoming number 2 and the biggest economy in East Asia. Also, the authority of China is quite active in promoting FTAs. So China will drive East Asian regionalism. Politically, Japan has a big problem in liberalizing its weak sectors, such as agriculture. So if we look at the contents or quality of many FTAs concluded by Japan, the coverage is very, very narrow, and market access is not enough to give trade discrimination against the non-member countries. The beauty of regionalism is actually the domino effect. So in a region, there are we can have many overlapping FTAs, but in the long term, the region will have a big trading bloc covering most of the countries in the region. So in order to have a domino effect, the non-member countries have some serious discrimination damages by not participating the large blocks. So basically, Japanese FTA has narrowly defined, so even they can promote many FTAs in future, but basically you will not suffer from not participating Japanese FTAs. So not domino effect. However, China has a different approach. They try to FTA the very comprehensive. I'm sorry, not comprehensive. At least in terms of market access, they want a very, very widely covered FTAs. So that means big discrimination effect. So other countries will try to conclude or join the FTAs by China. So that means, in addition to the economic size or the potential of its economy, but the approach toward the regionalism, actually China's approach back up the prospect that China will lead regionalism in East Asia.
Thank you very much, Professor Chung. Deputy Minister Chair, all right, given the stalled DDA round and also given ongoing the inter-regional free trade agreement, let me ask this couple of questions. First, an FTA is essentially the agreement to what we call this like-minded countries, right? When the Premier Wen Jiabao proposed the Korea-China FTA and is further extending to Japan, I myself, Chinese intellectual property rights system is ready to be on the same par with South Korea, and then you see China's all the economic policy making process is somewhat transparent and fitting into global standard. Given this constraint, do you think this South Korea should proceed free trade negotiation with China? I mean, you know, as early as possible, or just we say that, hey, okay, we'll do, and by letting the Korean think tank, you know, join at the just the impact study level, or what is, you know, Korea's strategy on this inter-regional FTA issues, especially with China?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. An. Another penetrating questions. Before, I just would like to mention about the prospect of a Korea-China FTA. I just would like to illustrate the fact about the trade relations between Korea and China. The two-way trade volumes accounted for $250 billion last year. This is representing around 25% of total Korea's trade volume. It's a huge amount of the trade being made between Korea and China is the number one trading partner for Korea. That is why the initiative for having FTA are being discussed very intensive ways, just reflecting the reality, the trade reality. Number two is that the two countries has different sensitivities in terms of the trading relations. The Korea has sensitive areas such as agriculture, fisheries, and textiles, and also some the small and medium-sized industries also showed the concerns about the liberalizations. We also had concerns that China had a lot of non-tariff barriers, and the distribution system is not much transparent compared with other developed countries. And we don't know whether China is ready to accept the high level of liberalization on service and investment, or protection of intellectual property rights and competition policies and so on. We do not wish to get FTA, bilateral FTA with China, only the low quality FTA. We would like to have a higher quality FTA with China, comprising the tariff barriers and the non-tariff barriers at the same time. But the level of ambitions could be different. Therefore, just reflecting the huge amount of the trade relations between the two countries and the need to promote further these bilateral relations, and also